Wake Up with Giants TV, and we'd like to welcome you tonight to Limitless with Shawnalee. And the book that we are talking and discussing about tonight is The Art of Smart Thinking. And just want to welcome you. So, tonight's guest, we have Colton Burr, and I'd like to welcome him. And so he's been a sales leader, senior sales leader, aerospace design engineer, a mechanical engineer for mining, advanced medical fabrication. His favorite quote is, "All that you see out in front of you is a result of how you feel inside of your head," which is by Alan Watts.
Mhm.
And I'll let you go ahead and tell a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm basically an engineer, and I had some other interests like psychology and things, and that led me into the work of Carl Jung, and then that led me further down the rabbit hole and further down the rabbit hole until I found James Hardt's book about the art of smart thinking and brainwave research.
Yeah. Oh, very nice.
But before that, I picked up a book by William Buhlman, and it was an out of body book. It taught you how to astral project or have an out of body experience, and I found that it correlated pretty heavily with brainwaves and how they correlate, where you go, the Akashic records, or just tons of other things. So basically, the thoughts control the reality is very true, but I would go one step further and say that the brainwaves control the reality that you're in.
I love that. Yeah. So explain a little bit more on just a tidbit more on OBEs. So what those are, and as well as what an Akashic record is for those that might not know what it is.
Okay, so the word Akashic comes from Sanskrit, which actually means primordial substance. So it's not just some record somewhere. Basically, what it's saying is that it's source.
Yeah.
So that would be more the Akashic record side. And then OBEs is just out of body experience. So anytime your consciousness is separate from your third dimensional body.
Yeah.
And, you can go places, do things when you're out of body. And it kind of depends on what vibration you're sitting at, depending on where you go. And for me, I found it's kind of hard to get back to the exact same place every time.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, time and space and all the dimensions that are layered within. It can get kind of complex to get back to the same place.
Very awesome.
So if we want, we can just start to delve into a little bit about brainwaves, why it matters to us, kind of what we see every day.
Yeah, kind of what we see every day, why people, why they're so busy, and why some people can't reach that, or why they stay, as you call it, in the three-dimensional hell, or how they're how brain waves can help you, and what you could do with them.
Yeah, and we'll touch on that, the whole 3D is hell thing in just a second. But essentially what's going on is most people go straight from delta waves, which would be the unconscious mind, slow delta, which would be anywhere from 0 to 2 hertz, straight into beta brain, which would be your rational thinking computational mind that you use to solve problems and take care of things. And they just go straight from one to the other. That'd be like going from first to fifth, and that's all you ever did to drive your car, is straight from first to fifth, back down. And you can imagine with that, you're going to have some high repair bills.
Yeah.
Probably won't feel all that great.
Oh, Hugh says, I thought OBE was related to near-death experience. It could be.
Actually, a lot of people have out-of-body experiences near death because of DMT that surges up the cerebral spinal fluid, and it induces an out-of-body experience. As a matter of fact, if you were to have non-endogenous DMT, you would have the same experience. You would have an out-of-body experience. And some people will use ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is very similar to DMT in its chemical compound, and it can induce out-of-body experiences. So some people will do that to have the journey that way. which I think is okay for some people, but I wouldn't lean into it as your only avenue to accessing out of bodies.
Yeah.
So,
Using the waves to access those outer body experiences.
yeah, and I like to think about it like brain maps. So it'll give you a brain map on exactly how that's possible for you, because a lot of people don't know just how far away OBEs are from the body experience until you've done it. And sometimes you need something to just kick you over the edge, and then you'll have the brain map for it.
Mm.
Because it can be different for sure. You have to let go of most ideas of ego in order to get into an alpha state, which would produce out of body experiences.
Oh, very nice.
So yeah, it's kind of hard to do if you're conceptualizing yourself as I, me, what I did, where I am. Most of that has to go away.
Mm. Yeah. Where you have no attachments to it. It says at 15, I inhaled gasoline and passed out and died and experienced his. Oh, wow.
Whoa,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Oh, wow. That's
And
crazy.
actually, the funny part is most people assume that you got to acquire some kind of skill to be able to astral project, but most of us actually did it as children. We just don't remember.
Oh,
It kind of turns like right around 7, 8 is where the beta starts to come in a little heavier, and you kind of forget that you can do it. Because I know we've all had those dreams that just feel more real than real. And I
yeah.
would argue that some of those are out of body experiences.
Mm. Awesome. So teach us how to get from first to second and second to third and third to fourth and then to fifth.
Okay. I would say refrain from the idea of hating any particular brainwave. Right now, we've kind of made beta to be the bad guy, but we need it. We need it to keep our body alive. And same with delta. Delta is the off switch for your mind. It's that 2 hours of time you can't really account for when you're sleeping. It's just pure black.
Mm.
So that's kind of like your off switch, what you need to heal. If you don't sleep for more than, what was it, like a week, you start to
Yeah.
go crazy.
Yeah.
So that's the necessary off to the on that we need for delta. So we'll just start going down the list of the different
Sure.
brainwaves and some of the nuances in them. So delta is from 0 to 4 hertz, and you're unconscious in between 0 and 2. And then there's a subset in delta between 2 and 4, which is called waking delta. So waking delta, sorry, 1 second here.
You're good. We have a lot of deep dives into this, and Colton is really good about reality creation and using, his body is like the avatar and creating the experiences that he'd like um, to see and to manifest and really hold it and make it possible in this now moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm no different than anybody else. I'm no more special. I'm just hoping to provide a map for you
Yeah.
guys to do the same thing for you.
I love it.
So
I
I
need
don't know
more.
if you guys have ever seen Dune, the movie Dune. Another good example would be Star Wars.
Mm.
But if you're in waking delta between 2 and 4 hertz, you start to have a little bit more control over your environment or even influence to other people.
Mm.
So in the movie Dune, they use the voice to kind of control somebody. It's actually more of a real thing than you think it is. And you can
Yeah.
do that by Delta training, but Delta training is the last of 18 trainings that the Bio Cybernaut Institute will offer you because you've got to have a high morality.
Yes.
Got to
Yeah.
have a high morality with that kind of power.
And
But it
one,
isn't at all fake. There's like 7 or 8 different accounts in some of James Hart's or Jim Hart's, whatever you want to call him, his
yeah.
research. He's got a couple videos up on YouTube, but his website is biocybernaut.com.
By,
And that's where you can get the PDF for the book that I downloaded and read. And then
yeah.
he's also got all of his links to his trainings that he does. And then just other research that he has up there, and some of his videos too. If you follow the YouTube channel, there's some good videos on there, some crazy, intriguing videos.
Mm, very nice.
So there's a good story about Waking Delta and this guy named JH, who was doing all this training and mapping, and they were mapping his brain, and they noticed he had really, really high delta. And they asked him, "What are you doing?" And he was a very shy person.
Yeah.
He was like, I don't know, I'm just doing it.
Yeah.
And then a few times kind of came through, and then they turned up the feedback, the volume on the feedback, so that he would recognize when the delta's happening. And he said, "Hey, so what happened when you heard that loud tone? What was going on?" And he's like, "Well, I didn't really think you'd get it or understand, but that it was actually Kundalini. And I used Kundalini to produce more delta. So delta is a good state for Kundalini awakening, and you can use that for all kinds of things. It actually starts to change your life as soon as you have even just a small Kundalini awakening."
Yeah. Some people, you tend to have to be careful with Kundalini awakenings because some people can go into psychosis.
Mm-hmm.
But as you go into the Kundalini awakening and gently approach that, you can take that energy and sneak it up through all of the chakras and really be able to use that energy. It's a gift, and it's a sacred gift to be able to use that to open it up each one of the chakras. And it helps you with manifestation. It helps you with so many different things. And so I wouldn't use it by force, because you can, there's been people that have gone off of the deep end, but it can be very frightening for some people, or interesting as like, what the heck is going on with my body when that happens? And so it is, again, feeling very safe in the body and getting yourself in that safe and receptivity mode is open and receptive. And, all right.
Yep. And I found that that's the key is
Yeah.
less that you force something to happen for you.
Yeah.
It's less that you force it, and more that you're trying to seduce the universe to do work with you.
Yeah.
It's a partnership. It's just a very subtle, slow, easy moving thing. And it doesn't have to be forced. It doesn't require a whole lot of strain, because you're just going to go straight back up into beta. And the moment you begin to try, you're going to end up in beta, and it'll just pull you back out.
Yeah, I loved how you explained to me. It's like you want this tattoo, Shawnalee, and you give it to your tattoo artist, and you're like, okay, I just want something like this, but I trust you. I have a great tattoo artist. I love him. But he has such beautiful artwork, and you're just like, well, I know that I want this, but I trust you to give it to me. So it's like that trust with the universe. And then it's created, and it comes into its own creation. And all of them have been better than I had ever expected. And that's like the universe. You're co-creating with the universe. The universe wants to help you and be partners with you. I love how Nicholas Smith, he talks about Albert Einstein, and he talks about how we have that same brain as Einstein. But Einstein said, is this a friendly universe? And yeah, it is.
Yeah, and to touch base on that conversation you were having about the tattoo artist, what I said was,
yeah,
you get to show up to the place with the idea, but you don't get to pick the end result. And that's as far as you need to go with manifestation. Pick the place, pick the idea, but you don't need to worry about how. You just need to worry about what.
Yeah. And that relaxation, being open.
In that nice creative flow, you're not stressed out, you're not worried about every minute detail, you're just kind of there, and things are going good, and it's just good that way. And that's the same kind of thing we're trying to do with the universe and higher self, is just be there in the right place and not force or try too hard into any kind of that space, because the moment you're trying too hard, you just pop out of it. It's the same thing with any of those, the Akashic records, the delta waves, the voice, the out of body experiences. The moment you're trying too hard and you get desperate is when it leaves you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and then next we have theta waves. Theta is between 4 and 7. At the
Yep.
low end of theta, you're going to have like senile, or you're going to be sleepy and dreamy. At the higher end, between, I don't know, 5.5 to 7, is where most of your downloads come from, the Akashic records. So there's actually this fascinating story about Thomas Edison.
Yeah.
Did you know that he had 1,000 patents under his name? Not just a light bulb, but
Didn't know how many, but yeah, he had quite a bit.
and how he did it was he would sit in his chair with some ball bearings and he'd put pie plates underneath his hands. And just as he's trying to think about what he wants to invent, he'd fall asleep and he'd drop the ball bearings and it would startle him awake. And he'd get up and he'd write down whatever he was thinking about just as he fell asleep, because he knew he was training for theta, which is how he did it, which is the same thing that Albert Einstein did. And it's the same thing that most of the greats do. They're just accessing a download through the Akashic records based off of their brainwaves. So you don't have to be special to do it. You just need to control the brainwaves.
I love that. I love also Tom Bilyeu said that that's when he gets 80% of his ideas for his businesses in that theta state. And he calls it actually like thinkitate. And so he'll have his laptop right by him and he'll be go right off, just like Thomas and Edison did, and then go into that state and then wake up and type up his ideas. And so then that way he is able to get his business ideas.
And that's all we really need to do. Like this world, everyone wants to have the house and the car and the fanciness. All of that stuff is just a result of getting your own brain where you want it to be. It's just an end result.
Love that. Yeah. So using these states to get where we want to be.
Yeah. Yep. And then the next is alpha waves, 7 to 13 hertz. Alpha is going to be where all of your stimulus type feelings come from. So like bliss, euphoria, awe, those are all going to be in the alpha. And as a matter of fact, if you were to measure someone's brain waves and they had really low alpha, like somewhere in 4 to 5, they're probably not going to be alive next year.
Wow.
So you can measure the brain waves of some 80-year-old lady who has really strong alpha. She's probably right around 8, 9, 10.
Yeah.
You can bet that she'll be alive in the next 3 to 5 years. But if you have somebody who's nihilistic and depressed and kind of out of it, and they're reading really low alpha, it seems to be more closer to the Schumann resonance at 7.8 hertz, which would be the resonance of the Earth.
Yep.
So without the Schumann, you're basically dead.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. We had a question. How can we remain aware of the travel when we wake back up?
For a lot of us, it's going to be more real than real. You're not going to have a hard time remembering it when it's happening at its fullest. You can kind of slip into the Akashic records and theta while you're sleeping. But alpha is going to be something where you're almost asleep and you can feel that everything's kind of settled and tucked in and ready for bed, but your mind is still slightly awake. And that's a kind of a tricky place to be, because you don't want to run any beta in that mode at all. So you're not going to forget, because it's going to be way more than what this is. It's going to be very visceral. It's going to have a deep impact into your psyche when it does happen.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry about forgetting it. You can have funny lucid dreams, though, where you can get information from the Akashic records. And those can be kind of tricky to remember. But I would say the easiest way to remember them is to write them as soon as they're fresh. Which we mean that you get out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and write something down in your journal.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a good question, though. Thank you.
Yeah. When people get ideas, write it down. Have a notebook right next to your bed and write that down. you were talking a little bit before you go to sleep, like that's a good time to just kind of relax and image in your mind of what you would like to happen, like that wish fulfilled.
And there's two kinds of people, and you need to figure out which one you are. Because I'm one of those people where I need to sleep first and get my delta in where I'm completely unconscious. And then in the morning, early morning, while everyone's still asleep, is the easiest time for me to have an OBE because I've already gotten my sleep in. Some people can't do it before, some people can't do it after. It just depends on the personality type. I found for me that I have to do it mostly in the morning or at midday. If I'm super tired and I'm ready to go to bed, I can't get in there. I'm just ready for sleep.
Then you're just like, okay, I'm out.
Yeah. I mean, I can hang out in Theta for a little while and have some lucid type dreams, but I found that I need that 1-2 hours of delta of just being unconscious before it's easy enough for me to get back into alpha.
Okay. What would you say about people and their brain waves? Like you're talking about how some are easier than others. How would you assist them in finding where they're at and how to possibly like record that or maybe use something to train their brain? Or
so there's 3 ways that you can get to the higher end of the strata of each of the brain waves. So delta, the waking delta, where you have a little bit of that Jedi mind skill, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And then theta, which would be the Akashic record, and alpha, where you can astral project, is going to be, you want something that has feedback. So the 3 modes are, you can go to James Hardt's training, which costs you $22,000 to do it for 7 days.
Cheap. Yeah.
Well, it does pay off because it nets an average increase in the salary of $1,000 per year, and it's linear. It doesn't degenerate, so it'll pay itself off pretty fast. The other way would be to do what monks and yogis do, which is to meditate for 21 to 40 years to get to that kind of brain control where they can just sit for days and chant at home and be whatever brain state they want to be in.
Yeah.
But it takes 40 years to do it without feedback.
Yeah.
And then the final way is there's lots of cool companies out now like Muse. They make EEG headbands. So this little device goes on your head, and there's sensors here that will measure the frontal cortex. It'll measure all the different brain mapping areas for you. So this is a way to kind of bypass both of those options that are hard for most people. So you can get a headband, Muse meditation headband, and get live real-time feedback about what your brain is doing. And I would argue for most people, the Muse app that you get is going to be enough to calm the mind and to train it. But if you're super curious about what brainwave you're in while you're doing the meditations, you can buy a third-party app for $15 called Mind Monitor. And I'll show it to you now. Actually, let's see if I can get the headband hooked up here for a second.
Okay. And then while you're doing that, Hugh says, can you experience outer body experiences while awake?
Oh, yeah. But it's a different kind of awake. So what do you mean by awake exactly? Do you mean walking around and... Yeah, like while you're walking around? And the answer to that one is if you're walking around and you're still conscious, that's going to be what we would call quantum shifting. That happens quite a bit when you're in high alpha states while you're still awake. And some people experience synesthesia, or what I would call the bleeding effect, where you kind of have like past life experiences coming back through, or future experiences, or the subtle energies of the universe start to kind of happen while you're awake. And so I would say that you're not going to have a full out-of-body experience while you're all the way awake.
Yeah.
Sometimes information comes out that I can't explain. Yeah. So that's downloads because you're using a theta wave or an alpha wave. And you can do that mostly awake, but you're not going to have a full out-of-body experience until you can kind of dock your body, like leave it somewhere while you go somewhere. So
Oh,
you'll
yeah.
want to do that when you're having a full out of body experiences. But yeah, you can definitely have downloads all the time, all day long, just because of the brain waves that you're using. And it isn't like one is on and the rest are off. It's that one takes the lead and the rest take the back seat. So they're always on all the time. It just depends on which one you're focusing on. So now that I got my headband on, I wanted to
Yeah.
show you guys. This is the Mind Monitor app that's giving me real-time feedback of what my brain is doing. So there's the different types there: delta, theta, alpha, beta, and gamma.
Love
So
that.
it'll show you what you're doing. And then at the bottom here, you can actually, let's go the other way, record. We'll do it this way, record.
Oh, yeah. That's okay.
Record while you do a meditation and then email it to yourself. And you can see what it's doing when it's recording for your meditation, which is going to give you all the feedback that you need.
Yeah. Which is awesome. And then you can kind of understand a little bit more about whether you're in delta or theta or alpha, and understand, oh, well, I was in beta for so long. It took me so long to get relaxed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And it would be nice if you could program specifically to the brainwave, whatever sound you wanted to hear, so you could just get feedback directly from Mind Monitor. I haven't found a way to do that yet, but what I've done is I just used the Muse app and listened to the Muse app for the real-time feedback into your ear. So you plug in headphones and it will tell you what brainwave you're using. So alpha, where you're really calm, you're going to hear birds.
Nice.
Birds is good. When you're in beta brain and there's a lot of scatter, chatter, your mind's kind of all over and racing, you're going to hear rain.
Ooh.
And so they programmed it in a way that's aesthetically or not aesthetically, but audibly pleasing for you.
Cool.
So it's not going to pull you back out of it as soon as you get into a nice flow.
Ooh.
And the birds are pretty quiet and subtle. It just kind of glances through your mind. It doesn't like startle you and pull you back out of it.
Which is good.
So, but yeah, the brain is the only organ we have in our body that doesn't have feedback about itself. So, where your hands are, your fingers are, your ears, your eyes, all your senses are coming through. But the brain is the only thing that doesn't have feedback, which is why it takes 21 to 40 years. Yeah. Or you can give it feedback in about a month or two. You'll have most of those brain waves under control, and you can use them where you want to. I did it kind of the hard way, where I dabbled back and forth without any kind of feedback when I was learning how to astral project and things. Yeah. And let me tell you, it can get kind of hard. And I used some of the practices that they had in the book from William Buhlman. There's different practices that you can do to induce an out-of-body experience. But I found that after so long, it becomes mundane and it doesn't work. Why doesn't a tried and true method work anymore? Yeah. Why is that so? And it's because you're no longer producing alpha when you think about that thought. It became habituated, and now you're only running in beta. Yeah. So it's less important the technique you use for it, and more important the brainwave you're producing when it's happening.
I could totally see that.
Because I was really flabbergasted. I was like, I don't know how this is not working anymore. It works great, and no, it doesn't. What happened? And that's what it was. It just became mundane. So, yeah.
I think we stopped off of alpha.
Yeah, alpha. So, alpha, the bliss, the euphoria, where you don't have a great perception of yourself when alpha's happening. You actually just kind of notice it as a happening. So a good example I can give you of what alpha would feel like is if you're driving home and for a half a millisecond, you notice the beautiful sunset. You kind of glance over at it. That first half a millisecond that you noticed the sunset before you thought or said anything inside of your own mind is a good appetizer to what alpha feels like. Where you're not contemplating ideas, pictures, images, archetypes. You're not contemplating anything. You're just kind of observing it happen. And Ellen Watson called that the happening.
Ooh, yes. Love that. It's just
which
that,
can be kind of hard to do. You got so many distractions.
yeah. Yeah, we talked about that, how there are so many distractions and that we tend to make things a little bit more complicated than they need to be.
Mhm. And it helps you to remember that alpha is slightly lower in the spectrum than beta. So the amount of activity in your mind for beta, you need to be in a calmer, more quiet place for alpha to happen.
Mm.
So beta waves are going to be between 14 and 30 hertz. And
Oh,
that's our rational, computational thinking, everyday mind that we use to solve problems and to take care of things and to use language and kind of operate and move through this 3D. And gamma waves, I don't know a whole heck of a lot about. I know
yeah.
that they appear in bursts, and I would imagine my hunch is that you're going to produce a lot of gamma when you have a near death experience or you have that sudden shock of an OBE, like a spontaneous out of body experience. I would imagine you'd see some gamma there, but I don't
Mhm.
know for sure. I don't.
That's okay.
So there are certain do's and don'ts.
Yeah. Let's,
There's definitely don'ts for alpha. Alcohol, number one don't. I did a little experiment last night, and I had a beer, and I played some Call of Duty, and I had no alpha after. It was like basically off the chart for 18 hours. So
yeah.
avoid alcohol. Video games are pretty high stress for alpha because it changes the way that you're running your brain waves for the next 4 to 6 hours, which is why people who game or they stay on their phone too late can't get sleep for quite a while after
Mm.
because it's a stimulant for
Yeah.
beta. Garlic is one of those things that can kind of lower beta or alpha a little bit. Onions can lower alpha a little bit. Um, there's a few other things, but those are the big ones.
Yeah.
Also, it is perfectly impossible to make any alpha while kids are streaming. I know that one from experience.
Yeah.
It just pulls you right into 3D because you need it. It's their mechanism to get attention, and so it just sucks you straight back down into beta. It's just impossible
Yeah.
unless you're really really good. But I'm not that good.
No. Yeah, well, I mean, it's just like, no, that needs your attention. That's a reason why.
So I've kind of mentioned that there are three different reasons on why you'd want to have brainwave research in your life or what it could do for you.
Yeah.
But there's other stuff too that's pretty straight up across the board. It
Okay.
will net you a 50% increase in creativity.
Mm.
50% increase in creativity.
And we all need that.
Yes. 11.7 boost in IQ, which we didn't think we could move. We thought IQ was pretty stagnant, but that isn't true. When you
Yeah.
have brainwave feedback, you can actually move that marker quite a bit, 11 and a half or 11.7 points on average between people. Some people it's 3, some people it's 20. It just depends on the person.
Mm.
And then finally, the more important one, yes, I said more important, was
Yeah.
raising your EQ, your emotional intelligence.
Yes.
15.8 points
Mm.
on average in emotional IQ, which will account for 70% of your life success, your success in business, relationships, just overall life success is mostly based in your emotional intelligence and less about your actual IQ.
Mm.
So there's some more benefits.
Yeah. I love that. And that you can also, well, yeah, like you said, enhance creativity, help you with problem solving, relationships, reduce stress and anxiety. So you don't have to lean over to those other substances to
Mhm.
offer that relief. You don't need it anymore. Mental peak performance, clarity, expand your awareness and your intuition.
Mhm. Your
And
clairs and your gifts and all of the subtle things that you don't
yeah,
quite notice when you're overly stimulated.
do you understand emotions as good or bad? Or are they neutral?
That's a difficult one because they can be good or bad depending on the behavior that exhibits from the emotion you're experiencing. One
Yeah.
of the things that happens with a Kundalini awakening or an out of body experience is you have a separation of your consciousness where you're partially an observer. And you and I talked about it a little bit. You kind of pretend
Yeah.
like you're the movie star
Yeah.
of your life. And that creates a different step. You have one leg back up that you can go from. So you can observe how emotions are playing on your body without having to instantaneously react to them and produce that out into your environment. So something can happen to you that makes you angry and you can go, man, that made me kind of angry. But you don't have to instantaneously react on it. You can just sit with that for a minute. And that also allows you to feel the full experience of the emotion. Let's say you're having a hard time, kind of went like a week or two long in depression state, but you haven't really addressed it. If you have that slight separateness of the consciousness between your higher self and
Yeah.
your actual mind, you can sit with that depression for maybe 3, 4 hours alone in a room and not have it destroy you. And then the emotion is fully processed and you can move on because you're going to carry along that karmic energy until you get to the point where you've experienced the full emotion, right? That's how we release karma, is by having the full experience. Shawnalee, can you talk really quick? I don't know if I can hear you still.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Your mouth is moving, but I was like, did the audio cut out?
Probably just like agreeing with you, just like in awe. I love talking about this stuff. So
Me too, all day long.
yeah, totally.
That's a good question. I like her questions. She's cool.
So are you. I love learning about all the different things that you can do with it and create your reality.
Mhm.
And I love hearing deeper layers of it, and love how you can just sit there and that you do, allowing yourself to fully feel that emotion. And I loved how you explained that. I think that's been, you explained it a little bit different than I've heard how before. Yeah, you want to feel your feelings so you can heal them. But I love how you said that you can also release that karmic pattern with it.
Yeah, because I mean, if you shove it under the rug, the dirt is still there. You
Yeah.
have to let it process through the body. And the best and easiest way to do that is when you have just a leg up of, like a part of yourself you can reach up for and still associate with that. That would be your higher self. I associate primarily with my higher self. And this is just my 3D body, and whatever it's experiencing and emotioning doesn't necessarily not count. It's just that it doesn't completely take you down the river. It doesn't sweep you away and take you away in your emotions. You can sit there, process them, work through it, and then move on to the next thing. And it doesn't mean that
Yeah.
you're never going to be angry or sad or have issues like that. You're going to, but it's just nice to have that part.
Hmm. Yeah. I see emotions as the alpha state, if not until I process and allow my mind to label it.
I see emotions as that alpha state. I don't know if there's a perfect correlation between brainwaves and emotions.
Yeah.
I know that there's definitely some emotions you only experience in certain brainwave states and vice versa, but it isn't like every emotion is within one brainwave. So, like we were mentioning before, your beta is where you're going to feel your stress, anger, anxiety, restlessness, depression. All of that stuff's going to be around the realm of beta. And then
Yeah.
alpha is going to be your more, again, euphoric, awe, bliss feelings that you're going to have.
Emotion versus feelings.
Yes. And you can have, I don't know, sometimes you can be in like a theta state, but still be happy, right? Because we would normally associate happiness with alpha, but that isn't necessarily true. When you're theta, you're in that dreamy, drowsy, Akashic record state. You can still feel bliss and euphoria there too.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit on um, I mean, you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but how would, people use this to create their reality? Excuse me.
This kind of goes back into some of the cliches that happen with manifestation. Cliches are going to be you have to be very precise, you have to have a vision board, you have to look at it every day. And I find that that's actually very, very, it can get counterintuitive if it
Yeah.
becomes mundane, if you're no longer producing alpha while you're trying to manifest. So
Yeah.
that would be a good idea to throw on your meditation headband and envision the things you want in your life and make sure that you're on the alpha spectrum when that's happening. Because that emotion, that tie to the alpha is what's going to bring it in fast. It's going to come in hard and fast with the alpha. That's
Mm,
the quickest way to manifest, is to produce alpha while you're thinking about what you want, which is how they do it. It's
yeah.
less about the procedure, more about the brainwave or about the emotion that you're feeling when it's happening.
Mm, love that.
But some of those are pretty practical and they're good, and it will allow you to really get in and figure it out. Because most people, let's say one of their goals is to write a book, and they get the book, but they never put a single word into it because they're afraid of it. So
Mm,
those practical methods do kind of get you out of analysis paralysis, where you're just not moving on it yet.
yeah.
Mhm.
Are you telling me to start moving?
No, you're good.
You're calling me out.
No, I look up to you because you've got so much going on all the time. You're
Yeah.
going to different places and meeting with different people, and
Yeah.
even these podcasts. I mean, that's such a huge avenue to more information and more
Oh,
experience in
totally.
life.
Totally, totally. And meet so many different people and experience so much through them. I learn quite a bit through these podcasts. And yeah, the book is coming along.
Good,
Yeah,
good, good. I'm excited for the book. I can't wait to read it.
yeah. Yes. Yeah,
So
so
we kind of gone over the different brain waves, how to use them, what they produce, the different methods or books,
yeah,
or the resources. We've kind of gone over most of those.
yes.
If you want, I can kind of talk to you about some of my opinions. They're not truths, but they're opinions.
Yeah,
And I found that one of the most beneficial things for me in getting started was getting my brain right in the first place, which was how I got started, right? I was telling you guys
yeah,
I was reading Carl Jung, but before that, it was Jordan B. Peterson, who was the psychologist that I mentioned to you before, right?
yeah.
And that allowed me to get my psychology straight.
Mm,
And after my
mhm.
psychology was straight and I didn't have things twisted or backward, it was a lot easier to produce the brainwave that I wanted because
Yeah,
I'd done the work in my psyche. The psyche's got to be fairly organized. If you're a very high anxiety person, your life is kind of chaotic, you're probably not going to astral project very easy or have an out of body experience very easily because it's gripping your attention to deal with the things in front of you. Your anxiety is calling you to pay attention in the third dimension. Hey, pay attention, something's going to happen to you. Hey, pay attention, something's going to happen to you. So a good place to start would be getting your psychology straight, making
yeah,
sure that you're not having ideas twisted around that are, at the end of the day, self-sabotaging, because you can tell yourself lies that will actually hurt you.
yeah,
That's going to change the way that things happen. So you want to try and mitigate all the lies that you're telling yourself, all the things that aren't true, which goes into Jung's work with the
yeah. The
shadow.
mm-hmm.
The shadow was big for me.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of misconceptions around the shadow itself. Um,
Go
the
into
way
that.
that I like to describe it would be the shadow is the you
Yeah,
that would do whatever it took to protect somebody that you love. And that's the energy and place where it comes from. It still needs to come from a place of love. It isn't a place of domination and sheer rage. It isn't.
no.
It comes more from you. and it is your other side of you that's capable of doing whatever need be done if somebody who you love is in danger. And you need to be associated with that part of you. And one of the stories that I like about that was about resentment. So a lot of issue comes from not consulting with your resentment. And if you don't have a decent integration of the shadow, it's going to be harder for you to speak your resentment right at the beginning. Hey, I don't like how this is going. I don't want it to go this way. And you kind of catch it as the trajectory is changing instead of after the fact where you're way out into left field. So there's a story of, this is kind of a gruesome story, but of a mom who didn't quite address her resentment with her kids right at the beginning. She's a single mom. She's very high stress. Things were going hard for her. And she thought that she was an angel. She thought she was a saint. She thought she was the best mom on the planet. And she hid that truth from her kids until they pushed her too far. And she got into domestic abuse cases and things like that because she wouldn't allow herself to be the bad person. She wouldn't allow herself to tell her kids the truth of, hey, I've had a real crap day. Now is not a good time to poke the bear. I would suggest going to do something else because I'm just not going to be available for you. I'm just not in a good place for it right now. And a lot of people don't do that.
Yeah.
With their kids or any relation is they just don't speak the truth. They're afraid to show weakness. They're afraid to show what's really going on underneath. People label the shadow something bad. Yeah, I'm with you on that one, Hugh. I don't know why people label the shadow as bad, and I think a lot of it comes into the cliches that happen with the shadow work. It can be scary. It can be very taxing on you to deal with it. And maybe that's where they get the bad connotation from, because it is very taxing to deal with. It's very hard to imagine what you could be or what you would do in a tiger situation. And some men would argue that they're fine. Oh, I don't have any problem going to war, doing what I need to do. But for men, I would ask, how much inner child work did you do?
Yeah.
As a big, strong man, are you capable of being there for, like the inner child that's scared, alone, and afraid, doesn't understand? Can you connect to that side of you? Because that was hard for me. It was really hard. I had a lot of emotions flowing through. I was like, inner child, come out. Tell me what's going on. I don't trust people. I don't like it here. Nothing's the same from one day to another. Nothing makes any sense. And it took a little while to draw it out and to incorporate it and make it feel okay and to deal with those. So that was the hard work of the shadow for me. And, some of it was hard dealing with my capabilities in a certain circumstance or situation like that, like just what would I be capable of doing if someone did have something, like my child in a precarious situation? What would I do? I don't know. I don't know. And I'm scared to find out. Right? But that's the integration of the shadow. It's the inner child work. It's the dark side of you that would do whatever it took. It's the parts of you you don't want to see or realize. Maybe you're really good at manipulating people. Maybe that's something you don't like about yourself. Maybe you've hid that away, but that's part of your shadow. That's a strength. That's something you can use, right?
Yeah.
So you can't. Jordan B. Peterson says that how you find the Holy Grail is you go into the forest, and you go into the forest at the side that looks darkest and most terrifying to you, which is exactly how you get to the shadow. You got to go head first into the fears and the things that you're avoiding.
Yeah.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you found a way to make that work for you, Hugh. I don't know how well I would do if something happened like that.
Yeah.
It would be rough. So
It'd be very rough.
My energy's with you. I see you.
Yeah.
Okay, so that kind of goes over the psychology part of it all.
Yeah, like the shadow work, accepting rejected pieces of you.
The next part I could talk about is I could talk about some of my OBEs, because I've only had about 4 to 5.
Okay.
And I remember them fairly well. but they're not quite what I would have expected right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So for me, the first time was gentle.
Yeah.
It was straight into the etheric plane, which is basically a mirror of what's happening here. It's just an energetic mirror of what's going on here. But it's not one for one. So if I light a candle, I go into the etheric plane. I can't blow it out in the third dimension, but I can blow it out in the etheric plane.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where you would go when you like want to put your head through a wall or, go do remote viewing. That's the etheric plane. I've been there a few times, but it's more of a waste of, well, it's a necessary first 2-3 steps, but you don't want to spend forever there because that isn't where the growth is. It's actually just more of a 3D, like just a copy of it.
Yeah. Kind of like that state where you can change certain things, like the bad guys chasing you. You could turn around and they're not real.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And confront that.
Yep. And that's something that's very handy to know, is that we'll go into the hell discussion now. Okay. So the definition of hell or Luciferianism is anything that seeks to bind or restrict.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the third density is a restriction. It's a third density that we can't move beyond in our physical plane. So anything after that, fourth, fifth, eighth, ninth, is technically heaven, right?
Yeah.
So you're only going to experience pain, suffering, and death in the third dimension, which seems obvious until you get out into the etheric plane and something's happening and you go, oh, and you flinch and you're like, I don't know why I flinched. Nothing's going to hit me here.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a knee-jerk reaction to kind of work through. And it takes that opening of the mind the first few times you have an out-of-body experience. But right about the second or the third time for me is when I experienced what they call the roar, where you'll notice a vibration and then it sounds like a jet flying through a subway tunnel. It like startles you bad. And you have to learn to remain calm through that transition, because the ego is going to want to pop up and try and protect you. Oh, something's going to happen. You got to wake up. When really it's not. All of that stuff isn't happening physically at all. It's all happening energetically to your soul. So the body doesn't experience it one bit. It's all the soul that's experiencing that part. So you have to remain calm through that and realize, and the easiest way to get through that is to realize that nothing's going to happen to you outside of this dimension. The only thing that can happen to you is within the third dimension.
Yeah.
So that's how you get over the shaking loop, the scared part of the shaking.
Yeah.
And then depending on what brainwave state you're in or vibration you're at dictates where you're going to go when you separate from your body. So if it's fairly similar vibration to what's going on here now, you're probably going to go into the etheric realm.
Yeah.
If it's higher vibration, if you're getting really, really up there, you'll probably end up going back to what they call the point or the singularity consciousness, where you're a single node floating in the ether of space and you have 360-degree vision and you're just experiencing everything as a fixed point. So that's pretty high up there.
Yeah.
Source would be going back into the white light, like straight back to source, which is, I would argue, like the fourth or fifth thing you should try and do, because just like the dissolution of the ego, when you separate, you're going to have that same type of experience when you go back into like direct source. A lot of you is going to be blasted away that just isn't true. And it can take a bit much, and you'll probably end up snapping back into your body 10, 15 times before you can sit through the whole thing, which is what happened to me. Because it gets rid of everything that doesn't need to be there. And you lose identification. There's no more identification up there.
Yeah.
Well, I was a little bit lower. It was probably like 4th or 5th dimension. I don't know. Sure, exactly. I can't quantify it. It's not like there's a label.
Yeah.
But to me, it felt like 4th, 5th when I had a really good out-of-body experience and I was relaxing in my bed. and everything was calm. And I like to think of the term, everything's tucked away for the night, which means I don't have any more thinking about what's going on tomorrow. I'm not
Yeah.
worried about where my family is. I'm not worried about anything that needs to be done. Everything's tucked in for the night where I can just be. And I started getting a little theta. Things started getting a little weird, a little lucid. And I kind of just fall into that space a little, relax into it. I'm not trying to like get an image in my mind and then hold on to the image. That's not what you're trying to do. That's what's going to shove it away. What
Yeah.
state where you end up kicking or punching the wall while sleeping? Um, that's when you go straight from like delta or theta straight into beta when you're wide awake, because your body,
That kicks you right back out.
yeah. The light, everything is limitations in the darkness, the possibilities. Yes, that's true. I like that one. I love that one. Yes.
Yeah. Got to be dad to Jessica for 23 years.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm laying in my bed and I just kind of notice that there's like a corner of the wall that is starting to turn a little bit more into what you would perceive as space, like a galaxy is kind of going on there.
Yeah.
And I just relax. I try and imagine that I'm changing form from a density into something lighter, like a vapor, an air, or a liquid, something that doesn't have constrained form.
Form. Yeah.
And I turned into like a orc cloud nebula, something or other. It's like it's steaming off of my body and then moving into the realm, but that's actually me. And there was a few consciousnesses there in that space that were manifesting as like a orc cloud nebula type thing.
Yeah.
I realized at some point that it was more so the universe was trying to find a way to interact with me personally. And so I had this image in my mind of me being one cloud and the universe being a different or another one, and just kind of glancing and gliding off of each other.
Yeah.
And as that glancing was happening, it felt like a tickly static electricity kind of feeling. It was weird. And as it kept moving through, it started to turn and churn a little bit. It just started to rotate as I'm moving through and coalescing with the universe, to the point where I had no idea what was in, out, up, down, back, forth, which was the thought that put me back into my body, because I articulated myself. But to me, in that space, there's no time. So it felt like hundreds of years. Hundreds of years. But the moment I snapped back in my body, I realized 4 minutes had gone by. And that's all it takes. It doesn't have to be forever. Because there's no time outside of that density. I would argue that you sense time more the lower density that you're in. So you probably get an hour per minute in the etheric realm, which would be the fourth. But fifth, sixth, 1 minute more into like 100 years or so.
Wow.
I've kind of noticed the same thing. What I do is I get myself into like a nice theta state where I'm all dreamy and drowsy, but I'm not really fully awake.
Yeah.
In that state, I'm trying to recapitulate what the meditation was until it plays by itself, to where I don't have to think about it, like breathing. You can do that consciously, or you can do that unconsciously. So you want ideas or resonancies or vibrations, vibes, to be present without you having to actively produce them. And the best way to do that is to just let it soak into you, into your subconscious mind. I found that music is a good one, because the music can still play in my head while the headphones are not in 3 hours after I've listened to the song, as long as I'm kind of in that dreamy state, which has worked well for me. So I'll pick some people are probably not going to like this, but I like some electronic techno-y kind of music.
Are they here?
No.
No, it's just you.
Yeah. I'm sorry. No, you're good. Hi.
Hi.
it's
But
live, so
it's all good.
you're good.
But
Yeah, so you pick some music.
you want to find something that has some really dirty bass. You want dirty bass because that's the sound that the universe makes when you transcend the dimension. When you go from fifth to sixth, that's the weird sound it makes. It's a weird kind of bassy, stretchy, elongated sound. So I like to use those earlier on, right before bed, and then as I'm asleep, they're kind of still there. I can still kind of call them up and use them easily. I don't have to strain.
Like the hum of the ceiling.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's actually what Alan Watts would say is the easiest way to get it to the meditative state is to begin by listening. Or you perceive or articulate the room. Just perceive the room and let the sounds flow into your mind. Just pay attention to the sound. You don't judge it. You don't put a label on it because your brain's going to do that automatically. You don't have to. Your brain is automatically going to put a sound or a name to whatever you're hearing. So you don't need to worry about it. You don't need to think about it or draw your attention to it, just like breathing. So, dishwasher turns off in the kitchen, but you're laying in bed listening to your fan, focusing on your brainwaves. That's fine. Your brain already knows what that is.
Yeah. And with it, too, you don't have to really think about it or concentrate on it either.
Right.
It's just there.
It's just there. And that's the same way that you're going to learn to process your emotions.
Yeah.
It's just there. It doesn't grab you. Mm-hmm.
And the thoughts you could just observe.
Mm-hmm. And this is a truth for me. It's what I found. You guys are going to find your own, I'm sure. But when I went back straight to the source, I had the question in my mind of, why are we here? Why do we incarnate here? Why do we keep doing that? What are we trying to do? If we're all from one source, what are we trying to do?
Yeah.
And the answer that I got was I was sitting as a single point of consciousness entirely alone, which is, I'm sure, exactly how the universe was feeling emotionally before the Big Bang started, alone. So the answer that I got was the reason we're here is to experience love for something else. That's the key, for something else other than the self. And a good way to get there is to articulate everything is the one or whatever. And so it's easier to relate and love things. But that true altruistic love, unconditional love between one thing and another that's completely separate was the point of why we're here. To experience love without it coming from you, from it coming from somebody else who loves you unconditionally.
I love that.
So that's my truth for me. That the universe was lonely, wanted to experience what true love was. And the only way to do that is to come here through the veil and completely forget everything that you knew and to love somebody without any of that information. Because the moment you have that information, we could argue it's not as altruistic. It's not as genuine.
Yeah. Love is experienced, not defined.
Yep. It is experienced, not defined. It's gifted, not taken.
Yeah.
You can only ever give it. Can't take it from anybody. And that's actually when I was younger, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, when I was getting kind of nihilistic. Is there a God? Is there no God? That was the one thing that gave me evidence of something higher. It was love, because it's the only thing that transcends time, space, and death.
Yeah, and it's the only thing that heals. Divine love heals everything.
Yeah, there's that too. So it has to exist in a higher dimension because it transcends every other thing here. Yeah. So there must be a higher dimension, right?
Yeah.
Which is how I got there. Which is how I got through doing psychology work and then into the shadow work and then into out-of-body work and then into brainwave work, which is a long story short of how I got here.
And into helping other people.
Helping other people. I have to be careful because I'm one of those self-sacrificing people.
Yes, got the boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You are a giver.
Thank you.
Yes.
Only
Yeah.
a healthy amount, I hope, anymore.
Yeah. You help.
So what are some more questions that you have for me? Things that you want me to touch on a little bit more, or things we could dive into a little bit deeper?
Um, Gosh, I don't know. Yeah, just I think it's having our own awareness of where we're at and that we can use these brainwave states. So not just like the thoughts and the emotions, because we do hear that quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and that and transcending the mind and
Mm-hmm.
being able to go past that, and that you can use these brainwave states to help you create your reality,
Mm-hmm.
just like Thomas Edison did, like coming back to that full circle, kind of wrapping all of that back up, is using that to your advantage.
Mm-hmm. And to help you, I mean, there's only benefit from doing something that small. I mean, it costs you maybe $300 to get all the way set up, and
Yeah,
that's all you need.
yeah,
And maybe what happens to you, and I'm hoping it happens to me, is you invest $300 in yourself,
yeah.
get to work for a few months, life starts to change around for you for the better, and maybe that buys you more time to go back to the Biocybernaut Institute to do a full 7-day intensive.
Mm,
Maybe,
yeah,
or maybe
maybe.
that's as far as you need to get. But I wanted to give people an option that isn't all the way up there right from the get go. $22,000 or 40 years. Both of
Yeah.
those are pretty hard to get to. I don't have 22,000 extra dollars just ready for me to go hang out for a week.
Yeah. Or time, right? Time is
Right.
limited. Time is the most important currency that we have,
Mhm.
is getting that time. And what he's talking about is that headband.
Yeah, this thing.
Yep.
It costs like $270, I think, on Amazon for the Muse S, but basically any of them will do. I would try and stick with Muse just because I know that the Mind Monitor app works and that the Muse app works pretty well for me.
Yeah.
But maybe there's better ones out there.
Yeah.
Let me flush all of that.
Yeah.
Um, I'll give you my answer.
Yeah.
Number one, do your shadow work,
Yes.
because you're gonna go to a really scary place that's gonna be very uncomfortable for you, and you're gonna have to grow up a lot. You're not gonna be able to tell yourself lies because your shadow is gonna call them out.
Hmm.
Which was one thing that I learned in meeting a mind face to face, was it called me out on everything that I do. Um, some people could argue, and I'd like to argue for myself, that I'm fairly smart, and so it's easy for me to get away with stupid things around stupid people. But the shadow knew that part, so it couldn't lie, couldn't cheat, couldn't work my way around it, couldn't manipulate. So that's going to cause a lot of growing up. And then your first full out of body experience is really going to wake you up and grow you up, because you'll realize that you're more than just the body, that there's infinite complexity right in front of you all the time.
Yeah.
And that also keeps you from getting bored or feeling like life is pretty mundane. You get into the
Yeah.
habits where every day is the same pattern. You could basically predict the future. That's a place you don't want to be. You really don't want to be there. But the moment that you separate from your body, you realize just how diverse this existence is.
Hmm.
And that will engage you back into life. So you'll be engaged into the astral projection side of things, or who you are without your body. And then being out there without your body is going to engage you into being back into your body, because you'll realize why you're here.
Yeah.
You'll be engaged into your work. You'll feel where you'll feel that sudden shift of you're right where you need to be.
Mm, I love that.
Mhm.
Um, let's see. Isn't each day the same? We get to just experience it differently. I would say that's the body. Um, Kind of how Joe Dispenza talks about that is that the body is the subconscious mind, right? And
Mhm.
so it gets used to having these same thoughts, these same feelings, like your body's going to trigger that response. It's going to tell you, oh, this time of the day we normally feel tired. We need to get a cup of coffee, or this time of the day we normally feel sad. And so as Joe Dispenza teaches, that first thing when you wake up in the morning is kind of how you do, is that's when you have found that's the best time for you to create your reality. As you go into a meditation and you get your body into the feeling of having it is what you want to have, and also expecting, like you're attuning your body into those sensations and feelings, because right now your body's just used to the same feeling that it's been feeling over and over. That's why things just keep creating in the same way. So it's getting your body attuned to it, is what I'll call it, and then also safe to feel those other feelings. And at the end of the day, most of it is like that happiness that we'll have when we have that thing, but it's feeling it that now.
Mhm.
So getting that feeling into the body of already having it helps you also let go and to release it and not resist it and push it away and then get into the force and then get into, because I've done that, and then that just causes the same old, and then isn't that actually considered hell?
Mhm.
It's what you call the 3D hell of just creating the same thing over and over and over again, and without actually changing things. So when you experience it in your mind first, then it manifests out on the outer.
Yeah, which is the huge benefit for me about being able to separate from the body, was I
Yeah.
could then begin to see how thoughts or your consciousness influences your reality. Because for me, I'm like, okay, I can imagine it here and now and I can feel grateful for it, but it isn't here right now.
Yeah.
And so I needed that back information. I needed the underpinning of, oh, this is a conscious reality. This whole thing is just based off of consciousness.
Mm.
Depending on where my brain waves are, I can go different places, do different things. So that was the link for me between having the idea
Yeah.
and having it around into your life. It's okay sitting in this I'm creating it stage, which goes back to the tattoo argument, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I set the expectation, I gave them the idea, now they're working on it. And you need to feel okay in the they're working on it part.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And the best way to do that is to notice that this reality is a conscious one and that consciousness is constantly working on everything. I mean, we could even go back to the double slit experiment.
Yeah.
One time it goes through, it's particle. We watch it, particle. When we don't observe it, it's a wave. And then later on, when we go back and check the video, let's say it's 30 years later, it will change and then decide at that moment, because it's quantum entangled, whether it was a particle or a wave. And the
Yeah.
only way that that changes between particle or wave is by a consciousness acting upon it,
Mm.
which is how you manifest,
Mm-hmm.
by consciousness acting upon what you want.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about crystals too. A lot of people want to know the hokey pokey about crystals and things.
Yes.
They're not hokey pokey at all. They're
Yeah.
just a resonance. They're just a frequency. Each crystal has its own resonance, and you can use that as a landing bridge between what you want to manifest and what's going on now.
Yeah.
So I want to manifest a car. Maybe I'll pick up a certain rock that has a certain vibration. Each time I hold the rock, I'm going to attune to that vibration of whatever's kind of subtly coming out of that crystal. And that will help me get there faster. We've all heard about gratitude stones,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Same thing, but it isn't just a placebo. The stone itself, the crystal, has a subtle resonance.
Yeah.
And we use that all the time.
Mm.
That's how I manifest things into my life. And that's why I like crystals and why they're not hokey pokey to me, because I
Yeah.
know that they produce a resonancy and I can use that resonancy to remember what I'm trying to manifest, or the feeling that I'm feeling
Yeah.
when I'm trying to manifest whatever I want.
And also help fill like those emotional gaps. I use crystals in Reiki,
Mm-hmm.
and the body asks me, like, This needs to go here. This needs to go here. This person needs this stone.
Mhm.
I don't even have to have them in the same room. And I'm like, oh, you need lapis lazuli. You need, I'm going to say it wrong. I call it kombucha jasper, but that's not how you say it.
I don't know either.
It's spelled something like that, but that's how I remember it when I'm like Googling it.
Yeah.
But,
And then the only other tidbit on that is, to me, the way that I put it into my mind are pictures are to emotions as crystals are to resonancies.
mm-hmm. And we're vibrational beings, and where they have that resonance or that vibration
Mm-hmm.
helps attune you to it. Love it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's actually some really great research by Nassim Haramein, who invented an art crystal. Art crystals emit photon energy inside of a Faraday cage. Faraday cage is just a cage that you'd see like on a microwave that prevents anything from coming in or going out. But they put a single probe in the box along with the crystal and put it in a Faraday cage, and then in a Faraday cage, and then in a Faraday cage, just to make sure nothing was going to get in there. And it emitted photon energy. Well, how does it do that? It's because crystals are actually an 8th dimensional artifact.
Mm.
It's pulling 0-point energy straight from ether based off of its geometry and resonance. And that's all you need to know. Its geometry and resonance is what produces the energy or its vibration.
Wow.
And if you want, you can look it up. Nassim Haramein. He's got a lot of really cool stuff. I like him a lot. One day I'll get me an art crystal too.
Yeah. Same.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about how
kind of like moldavite too, right? Everyone's like, oh, moldavite. Well, it depends on its resonance. So its resonance is that of something higher, like a higher.
Yeah. Go through clear channels when you're purchasing it too.
Yep.
I received fake moldavite.
Oh.
Yeah. Somebody got off with my money. Doesn't the crystal create a sense of love? They can, depending on like their vibration. There is like rose quartz crystal, which is very specifically for love.
Yeah. So quartz can be correlated to an alpha wave, and then depending on the type of quartz, could be whatever emotion would fall within alpha. So like let's say clear quartz, or rose quartz would be love. So it's attuned to something right around 8.5 hertz.
Ooh, I love that. Yeah.
Because Schumann would be 7.8. So quartz crystals probably hanging in there right around 12 hertz. Because we got 7 to 14 for alpha.
And I did not think about that actually. I mean, I knew about the hertz and everything, but I didn't really like attribute those to the brainwave states.
Mm-hmm.
As I know, roses are the same frequency as love.
Mm-hmm. So that's another way you could quantify it too.
Love that. Is there, do you know if there's like a chart that tells you what the crystal is and brainwave state, or you just take those frequencies and then you kind of play it from there? My hair's.
Mine has been all of my own research, but if you ever find one, or anyone does, let me know, because I'd love to have that too.
All right.
Someone to measure the resonancies of different crystals and tell me what they are, and then we can probably find a way to correlate them, but I don't have it right now. That'd be awesome.
The resonancies of crystals are. I will write that down because I love to find things. I'm pretty good at checking things out. We're making my own. So, yeah. Well, we definitely have talked about a lot, and discovering for yourself, that is awesome. Yeah. That's the best gift, is using the information and learning it for yourself.
Yeah. So what I don't want to do with the information that I've given people is give them the full map, because it doesn't mean anything to have my map. I want to give you a few checkpoints.
Yeah.
And then you go build your own map. You make it work for you. But you need those checkpoints. You need to know where to go. You need to know how to get the feedback. You need to know the next step. But the journey should be all unique. It should be your own. You should always question everything, especially myself tell you all the time. Go look it up, dig in, do the research, figure out where it came from. Get the in video games you'd call it lore. You want to get the lore behind what's going on.
Yeah.
So you want to get all that compounding information that builds up to where we are now with the surface level information, you know. It's like cliches and things. You want to get to how they got to a cliche, right?
Yeah, sharing your experience, not telling us how we have to achieve it, because each one comes to their own learning based on their own experiences and what, like you said, works for one person doesn't work for another. This emotion did this for you, but it did something completely different for someone else. And those experiences, things you have to learn by yourself. Yep. Amen. Yeah. We went a little bit. We're about an hour and 20 minutes. Is there anything else that you'd like to just wrap up?
Yeah, if you guys want to find me, you can find me on Instagram at Colton Burr, and I got a little bit of art and just novel art. I'm not that great yet.
Yeah, you're pretty good.
But you can message me there if you have specific questions. I'll do my best to get to them. I don't have a following or anything right now, so I'm open to questions or whatever I can do to help.
Yeah.
You know, it can get kind of weird. You get kind of stuck. You don't know for sure where to go, and it's nice to have somebody whom you can talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say my last, I guess, not warning, but similar to, is you don't want to be desperate to meet some deity or God. You don't want to do that, because they're just fractals of the universe, just like yourself. And you can meet and converse with them, and they'll try and talk to you a little bit, but don't stake everything. Don't stake your eternity on the feedback you're getting from some entity. Is my buddy Michael Falcone, he was also on Matt Beller's podcast. That's a good one, Mastermind Body Spirit Show. That's a good one. But he's on there talking about what happened with him, and forget the name of the god at the moment. But anyway, he just kind of devoted everything to it, and then he ended up kind of hollow for a little while and had to rebuild back from it, which is, you know, a big area and a pitfall that people fall into. Is you have to reinvent yourself when you give yourself to some other kind of deity, you know, Odin, Thoth, whomever, Buddha, Jesus. They're just there to assist you. They're not meant to give you anything. And you can hang out with them. You cannot hang out with them. They're just there. And it's all up to you. But they're not the pathway. You are. But they can be on your path.
Totally. You have many different messengers to help assist you on the way. Mm-hmm. Create a blank vision board.
Because I had that temptation that I wanted to have Odin hold me by the hand and walk me through everything and guide me to the next dimension or what. I had that inkling for a small minute, and then I noticed that it wasn't quite a truth. So it is an easy pitfall for people, because we've been genetically modified to have a worship gene.
Yeah.
You know, which goes into Billy Carson's work, talking about the worship gene and what happened about 200,000 years ago to us and how we got to where we were, which I'd highly recommend looking him up. He's got some really good stuff.
Yeah.
I like Billy Carson.
We'll have to get
so many great people out there. Robert Edward Grant, Billy Carson, Nassim Haramein, James Hart or Jim Hart, William Buellman. There's just so many. And then Brian Scott, Neville Goddard.
Oh yeah.
Have to read and spend time with it, and it'll start making sense.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Brian Scott's stuff is actually pretty good for astral projection too. He had one that was a quantum shift to heaven.
Yeah.
One was one that I had one of those experiences with. It It was more of a Kundalini type awakening for me, but that was one of them. So those are good hypnosises too for anyone who's just trying to maybe get the map first before they try it on their own. That's a good place to start.
Yeah.
And the hypnosis, you don't have to pay attention to what he's saying, and it won't keep you awake. Just keep the volume kind of down and just let him talk and pay attention as if it was noise and nothing more.
Totally.
You do go to those spaces, those quantum shifts, those astral projections, out of bodies, data, whatever. You'll go there as soon as you learn to just let it be.
He's one of my favorite for nighttime meditations, and there's just so many that I love of that, and falling to sleep with the wish fulfilled, and just many, many different things. So yeah. Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to ask me, or I know I'm taking a lot of your time? Sorry.
It's okay. I think that's it for now. I feel pretty complete.
Me too. I think I got most of it out.
Well, we did talk about possibly having another one, and we could talk about that offline.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to be back.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for joining. And if you're not a part of the Tribe of Giants, I suggest that you go and become a part of the Tribe of Giants. And that's all about reaching your highest potential. And I think this is a good tool that you can use to help assist you on that path. Is using those brainwave states and actually kind of paying attention to where you're at and helping you to create what it is you want to create.
And there's a bunch of really good other podcasts on there too that I like.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you, and I hope you have a good night.
Good night.